Hello, welcome to my video today. This is kind of the restarting of my blog, basically. I'd had it going pretty strong for several years and I kind of let it fall by the wayside, but I'm trying to pick it back up again, and I wanted video to be a much bigger focus. Today we're kind of digging into a nitty-gritty, mechanically focused concept specifically for players, brass players, and that is all about breathing and the physiological and a little bit about the psychological effects that we encounter when we deal with breathing for a performance setting. I'm pretty sure at some point, usually in high school or maybe middle school, we brass players in particular are told to push from your diaphragm when complaints about air support would come up in class. So while your band director was very well-meaning in this moment, they unfortunately sent you on a wild goose chase. Or more correctly, they kind of sent you down a rabbit hole of misinformation and misunderstandings. So today I wanted to hopefully explain a little bit about how the diaphragm and the abdominal muscles work to produce efficient breathing, and how this information can be used to really connect and improve our day-to-day playing. Okay, so let me preface this all with just a general warning. I am not a doctor. What I've learned about this subject, I've learned from some fantastic teachers, quite a bit of time on the internet, and a lot of time spent in the practice room trying to synthesize all of that information into real world utility, something that I can actually use while I'm playing the instrument. So if I get something wrong, please share your knowledge with me. I'm always looking for ways to improve my knowledge of the understanding of these concepts so that I can better teach it to others. So anyway, the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a large dome-shaped muscle that is positioned directly underneath the lungs and is connected to the brain by the phrenic nerve. And the phrenic nerve, basically, its one and only job is to make sure that the diaphragm contracts and relaxes to motivate breathing. We don't really feel the diaphragm working in the way that we might feel it like if when we use our biceps, when we use the types of muscles that we think about using on a day-to-day basis. We lift things and we feel our muscles contract, or things like that. Or we do sit-ups and we can feel our abs, and after a while they start to really hurt, at least for me. But what we do feel when we're dealing with the diaphragm is the effect of the diaphragm working. So when we inhale, the diaphragm moves down. It starts out as a dome-shaped muscle right here underneath the chest, underneath the rib cage, right where the lungs sit. And as it tenses, it actually flattens out. What that does is it causes a vacuum on the inside of the body, which causes air to rush into the lungs. So then, when we exhale, things basically just work in reverse. The diaphragm relaxes and it returns to its original dome shape. So it goes from being flat when it's contracted to relaxing into this dome shape, which is a little bit opposite of what we normally think of when we're thinking of muscles. Especially, we tend to think of like when we have our bicep muscle and we tense it, it becomes more curved. Then when it relaxes, it becomes flat. But the diaphragm actually works in the exact opposite way. So now you're probably thinking to yourself at this point, yeah, but what about the abdominal muscles? And I haven't really mentioned them yet, basically just because it's important to first understand actually how breathing happens, and that the diaphragm is the primary muscle related to breathing. As we are working our way into what it takes to breathe to play, we're going to talk about two different sets of accessory muscles, one for inhaling and one for exhaling. So the first set of muscles are for inhaling, and these are the intercostal muscles. A lot of us have probably heard about these muscles before, but we may not necessarily know exactly what they are. So the intercostal muscles are a set of actually multiple layers of muscles that are attached to the ribs. And what these actually do is when we engage them, they pull the rib cage upward and outward. This assists with inhalation by helping to further increase the space that our lungs are able to expand. So then the accessory muscles that are involved with exhaling are the abdominal muscles that we all know and love. The abdominal muscles work for exhalation by pushing basically all of your organs and everything that are in the lower part of your abdomen up into the bottom of your diaphragm, which pushes the diaphragm back into its dome shape faster than it would move normally. Okay, so the diaphragm contracts, flattening out, making space. That causes the air to come in. The diaphragm relaxes back into its dome shape. This reduces space. Air goes out. Or in simpler terms, we expand for inhalation and we relax for exhalation. And this phrase tends to go against both how we were taught to breathe as brass players, but also how we are psychologically conditioned to react to breathing under the stresses of performance. So it's good to go maybe even one more step and break it down a little bit more on each side of the breath, talk about how things should be working, and often the common pitfalls that we deal with. So regardless of what we're talking about, relaxation is key. A lot of us know this logically, but we don't really apply it in our playing. As we inhale, we can encounter several problems. Okay, so the first one is upper torso tension. We do this by tensing up the shoulders, the upper back, or actively disengaging the intercostal muscles. We restrict how much air is able to enter the lungs by preventing our body from expanding as much as possible. And when we hold that tension, especially up here in the shoulders, it inhibits the flow of the air through the throat and the neck. A lot of people have been told to kind of quote unquote belly breathe. And this is a concept which is a fine thing to say in and of itself, but I think it causes a lot of problems. So oftentimes when we see people quote unquote belly breathing, they will actively, purposefully deactivate the intercostal muscles in their chest so that they feel all of the breath happening from the diaphragm pushing downwards. Remember, your lungs are in your chest, not in your gut. So if your chest does not expand, you will not be able to take in the potential air that you have available to you. The other inhalation issue is the other half, lower torso tension. So this is stress in the lower back and in the abdominal muscles. So as we've already talked about, as the diaphragm contracts for inhalation, it pushes down into a flattened out state. But when the abs contract, they actually push up. So you can see we're working at cross purposes here. The action of the diaphragm is countered by the action of the abs. Many of us are told by an overzealous band director to, suck in air, and then they tend to suck in air and they slap their stomach like they're really trying to make a point. And this is all wrong. There is no way for us to force air into our lungs. But if we keep our lower torso muscles relaxed and allow our chest to expand via the use of the intercostal muscles, we're going to have the most efficient and quick inhales possible when it's time to play. On the opposite side of the coin, we have exhalation, the breathing out process. Again, we have several pitfalls here to trip us up, mostly taught to us by well-meaning teachers, but armed with misinformation. So the first way is we engage our abs. I see a lot of teachers demonstrating the use of their abs for exhalation by showing an exaggerated tensing of their six-pack towards their spine. And while feeling this kind of motion, this tightening of the muscles like that might be great for doing sit-ups, if you've ever tried to play your horn while doing sit-ups, you know this is completely counterproductive. Remember, the abdominal muscles are only accessory muscles for breathing. The primary muscle for breathing, both in and out, is the diaphragm. So you should never feel like you're actively breathing primarily via the abs. We allow the diaphragm to do the bulk of the work at the beginning before we start adding abdominal muscles into the mix. And this is going to kind of dovetail right into the next comment, which is that we are usually told to breathe with a steady stream of air. And I use this phrase all the time, which is absolutely right in concept, but just saying it that way can often lead to a misunderstanding of what that actually means as far as our muscular engagement. Usually when a student hears use a steady stream of air, what it means to them is we should try to feel a steady or constant muscular engagement throughout the course of the breath. We should feel exactly the same at the beginning of the breath as we do at the end of the breath. This problem is why most of us sound beautiful for about the first 2/3 of what we would call a full breath. We start playing, and it starts out good, but by the time we get to the last couple of measures, our tone is suffering and we've stopped thinking about musical goals completely. We're just trying to make it to the end of the phrase without falling out of our chair. So as we move through the time of an exhale, we should gradually be adding more and more abdominal engagement as the time goes on. Because of the continually decreasing volume of air left, if we push with a steady stream of air, we'll feel the breath get weaker and weaker. But if we think of constantly accelerating the air through the whole breath, we'll actually achieve the steady flow of air that we've been told to use. If you've ever tried to deflate an air mattress, right? And it's completely full of air when you start out. And if you just open up the release valve, or if it's got a hole in it, like most people's air mattresses do, it loses air. Air comes out of it in the beginning, no problem whatsoever. The air is flowing out because there's actually pressure pushing back from the edges of the air mattress. Then little by little, as it gets lower and lower, the outside of the air mattress becomes more and more relaxed. So it actually requires pressure from you to push down on the air mattress to get the air to come out at the same speed. And as it gets more and more flat, you're gonna be like mashing it down to get every last molecule of air out. And that is the way that we need to think about breathing. We have to continually apply more abdominal activity into the breath, and that's going to give us the steady stream of air. It's a little bit of a kind of, counterintuitive idea that we need to do more and more work to produce a steady result, but that is going to be the case. Lastly, on the exhale side of things, we have to think about the upper torso again. So just as before, tension in the shoulders and neck is always going to restrict airflow. But rather than thinking of forcing your shoulders down or opening your throat, since both of these require muscles to tense in some way or another, we should actively be working to stay disengaged in the upper torso, allowing the shoulders to rise and fall naturally and stay focused on the flow of the air at the embouchure to avoid activating the neck muscles. And also, if we try to force our shoulders down, we say, I'm gonna breathe, but I'm not gonna move my shoulders. There's no way I'm going to be able to take as much breath in or out as I would be able to otherwise, because I've got all these other muscles that are working actively against the natural breath process. The other major misstep I see people making is to collapse the chest cavity. This is similar to when I was saying people demonstrating breathing by talking about their abs pushing straight back towards their spine rather than up into the bottom of their diaphragm. Sometimes I see either teachers teaching or students just doing naturally where they actually take the chest and kind of try to push their sternum into their spine, and they breathe only from the upper part of their chest rather than using their abdominal muscles to create the flow. A strong, efficient exhale should feel as relaxed as humanly possible, especially in the neck, the chest, and I'm pointing in all the wrong spots. A strong, efficient exhale should feel as relaxed as possible, especially in the chest, the neck, and across the shoulders. In the end, it's the psychological game that gets most of us most of the time. We use words and phrases in playing, especially in brass playing, because it tends to be a kind of almost athletic event. We say, take in more air and push out air and create a sound with more pop or more punch. And these oftentimes, just while they are well-meaning, they tend to produce the wrong physiological response. Also, sometimes the truth of it is just that performance pressure gets the best of us. In the moment, you're sitting on the recital stage, you're coming up to the big moment in your recital, or you're getting ready to go onto the marching band field, or you're coming up to the finale of your competition show, and you think that it's going to be that extra oomph, that extra muscular activity that is what's going to take the performance from being just so-so to being something great. Or we just get nervous and twitchy in the moment, and we start to do things that are outside of our normal process. It's great to have all the science and all the mechanical knowledge, all the mechanical understanding of what is happening inside our body when we're breathing. But at the end of the day, we need to have a more intuitive connection to this information so that it becomes a habit and a habitual way of performing. It's going to be impossible in the moment to sit down and think about all of the okay, I expand my intercostal muscles, and then I need to make sure that my abs aren't engaged, and then now I'm going to turn around, I need to make sure that my abs are pushing up and not back, and then I need to make sure that my shoulders stay relaxed, and there's so many things to think about there. So at this point, just stop thinking about all of the breathing stuff that we've just talked about, all of the mechanics that we just we just discussed, and that we just went over in like probably way too much detail. And I just want you to focus on the two simple ideas that we already talked about. Expand to breathe in, relax to breathe out. The less muscular engagement that we feel we need to use to execute the mechanical aspects of our playing, then the more energy we're going to have left to be musical. Remember, we don't make music with our abs. We don't make music with our chest or our lungs or our embouchure or our fingers. The only place that music happens is up here in our head. So take all of the body energy you can out of your playing. Become less physically involved with playing your instrument and get more mentally involved. Reduce all of the body effort down to its bare minimum. That is going to be the real key to elevating and taking all of this science and all this mechanics that we've just talked about and using that to elevate our playing. So, thanks for watching this video. I hope it is helpful. Again, if anyone sees any factual or just conceptual errors that I've made in regards, especially to the science and the anatomy, please let me know. So, and also, if you have any other phrases or any other ways that either you as a teacher or you as a player that you use to think about breathing that helps you get to this positive place of efficient, smooth breath, I would love to hear it. It's always great for me to hear from other people the way that they approach these same concepts, because I feel like the more ways I have to say the same thing, the better I can reach more and more people as an educator. So anyway, thanks one more time. If you like this video, please give it a like, give it a comment, and especially let me know what you want to hear about next. It definitely doesn't have to be this mechanical in nature. It can be anything that has to do with being a musician in this day and age. That's why I'm here, and that's what I want to keep doing. So I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for watching this video, and keep an eye out for more in the future. Bye.